What if your only job today was to execute just one high-quality trade? Not 10, not 5, just one. One good trade, well-planned, well-executed, and emotionally clean. That's the heartbeat of Mike Bellafiore's entire philosophy, and it's the title of his book for a reason. You're not here to be a hero. You're not here to catch every move. You're here to consistently recognize and execute high-probability setups with discipline. That's it. The moment you anchor your entire trading identity to this simple but powerful principle, your performance starts to shift. Because one good trade is not about perfection. It's about process. It's about mindset. It's about playing within the framework of your edge, knowing exactly what you're looking for, and having the courage to pull the trigger when it shows up. Bellafiore makes it clear. Consistency is not born from brilliance. It's born from structure, from execution, from stacking good decisions over and over again until they compound into something elite. One good trade is not a slogan. It's a demand for clarity, for patience, for accountability, and most importantly, for focus. Because the biggest risk to your trading is not the market, it's you. It's your temptation to overtrade, to force setups, to revenge trade after a loss, to blur the line between gambling and trading. When you commit to one good trade, you eliminate noise. You're not distracted by FOMO. You're not chasing the hottest ticker. You're waiting for your pitch. And when it comes, you swing with precision. But that requires discipline. That requires faith in your process when others are chasing. It means learning to be bored, learning to be selective, learning to say no until the right yes shows up. Bellafiore saw this daily on his prop desk at SMB Capital. The traders who focused on one good trade each day, the ones who built edge around quality, not quantity, were the ones who lasted, the ones who grew, the ones who didn't burn out. You can't scale chaos. You can only scale clarity. And one good trade is the first brick in that foundation. Think about it. If every day you came to the market and executed just one textbook trade with full discipline, over the course of a year, you'd have more than 200 high-quality executions logged, reviewed, and refined. That's a career. That's where mastery lives. Because when you go deep into one setup, you learn its behavior. You learn its context. You begin to see subtle tells, adapt to different market conditions, and start to anticipate flow like a chess player reading 6 moves ahead. That kind of intimacy doesn't come from trading everything. It comes from choosing your battles wisely, and that choice begins with mindset. Bellafiore's most successful traders didn't brag about how many trades they took. They bragged about how well they stuck to their process, about how clean their executions were, about how disciplined they stayed when everything screamed for them to deviate. That's the real flex, not the P&L spike, not the one-off win, but the mental game required to sit patiently, filter noise, and act decisively when the time is right. So next time you open your platform, ask yourself, am I hunting for one good trade, or am I just trying to feel busy? There's a difference. One makes you a professional. The other keeps you stuck. Your job isn't to catch everything. Your job is to execute something worth catching. That's the shift. That's the edge. That's where your consistency begins, not with more signals, more indicators, or more trades, but with one good trade. Before the bell even rings, your trading day has already begun. Long before the first candle prints, the first trade is taken, or the first dollar is risked, the work should already be done. Preparation is not optional. It's your first edge. Mike Bellafiore drives this home with surgical clarity. The best traders don't walk into the market to find trades. They show up ready to execute the ones they've already prepared. If you're scanning at 9:31, hoping something jumps out, you're already behind. Because the real edge isn't in reacting, it's in anticipating. That starts with building your watch list, reviewing charts from the previous day, understanding the current news catalysts, and identifying which stocks are in play. Bellafiore's traders at SMB live and breathe this philosophy. Their mornings aren't chaotic. They're calculated. They come in with game plans. They know the levels, the potential catalysts, the expected reactions. They're not guessing, they're positioning. And that's the difference between randomness and readiness. Preparation means walking into the session with clear intentions. It means you've already defined your A-plus setups. You know what great opportunity looks like for you. You've visualized execution. You've mapped your risk. So when that setup appears, there's no hesitation, just execution. Preparation removes doubt. It shrinks fear because you're not improvising in real time. You're acting on a plan that was built in a calm state, away from adrenaline, away from market noise. That's what Bellafiore calls training your trading like a sport. You don't step onto the field hoping the play works. You run drills, build muscle memory, and show up ready to execute what you've practiced. The morning meeting at SMB is a blueprint for this mindset. It's where traders gather to share research, discuss game plans, identify edge, and collaborate in real time. It's not just about spotting trades, it's about sharpening conviction. Because conviction doesn't come from hope, it comes from preparation. You earn it through repetition, through studying your setups until they're second nature. And that kind of preparation doesn't just boost your technical edge, it strengthens your psychological one. When you're prepared, you're less emotional, you're more detached. You stop chasing, you stop second guessing, you stop flipping bias mid-trade. You begin to trust yourself, not because you're always right, but because you've put in the work to think clearly. And when a trade doesn't work out, you don't spiral. You know it was part of the plan. You know the setup was valid even if the outcome wasn't. That's the power of preparation. It gives you permission to lose without losing your mind. But let's be real. Most retail traders skip this entirely. They show up at the open like gamblers at a table, scrolling Twitter, scanning charts, looking for something to feel right. That's not edge. That's chaos. And chaos doesn't scale. Professionals prepare. They build systems around preparation. They time block their mornings. They review their trade journals before the session starts. They look at volume trends, ATR shifts, sector rotations, and fundamental drivers. Not to look smart, but to look prepared. Because trading is not about knowing everything, it's about knowing exactly what you need to act with clarity. So if you're still winging it at the open, hoping to find something that works, stop. Start prepping the night before. Build your playbook. Define your risk. Set alerts. Write out the thesis. Review your past mistakes. Visualize your entry and exit. And then, when the bell rings, you're not reacting to the market, you're following your map. That's how professionals move. That's how Bellafiore built elite traders. And that's how you build the habit that supports one good trade every day. You're not supposed to guess. You're supposed to execute patterns that you've seen 100 times before. That's what the playbook is for. It's not just a folder of screenshots or a journal of ideas. It's your personal encyclopedia of edge. In one good trade, Mike Bellafiore drills into the idea that pattern recognition is what separates the amateur from the elite. Your job as a trader is not to reinvent the wheel every day. It's to catalog, refine, and execute your highest quality setups with increasing confidence. When you build your playbook, you're not just documenting trades. You're training your brain to recognize opportunity faster and with less hesitation. Each playbook trade you log is another rep in the gym, another brick in your internal framework. Over time, these setups become second nature. Your eyes start to catch the nuances, your risk becomes cleaner, and your execution gets sharper. Not because you're thinking more, but because you've already done the thinking. Bellafiore tells stories of traders at SMB who transformed their careers by narrowing their focus to just a handful of setups and mastering them. It wasn't about catching everything. It was about owning their patterns so well that when one appeared, they hit it with size, precision, and full conviction. This is what it means to be a playbook trader. You're not reacting to the market. You're waiting for the market to come into alignment with your defined edge. The playbook removes guesswork. It replaces anxiety with structure. It keeps you grounded when the market gets noisy. And most importantly, it gives you a real-time filter for what not to trade. Because not every setup is worth your attention. The playbook trains you to say no. It forces you to evaluate opportunity through the lens of historical data. not impulse. It turns your trading into a repeatable process rather than a hope-based gamble. And the way you build it is simple. After each trading day, identify your best setups, screenshot them, annotate the chart, write out the thesis. What was the catalyst? What were the key levels? What did you see on the tape? How did you manage risk? What would you do better next time? Over weeks and months, this becomes a treasure chest of knowledge, your knowledge, tailored to your strengths. And here's the magic. When a similar setup appears in the future, you don't hesitate. You recognize the pattern instantly. You trust the trade because it's not new, it's familiar. That familiarity builds speed. It builds size. It builds confidence. And in trading, confidence backed by structure is a weapon. Most traders are lost in a fog of indicators, chat rooms, and FOMO. But the playbook cuts through that noise. It gives you clarity. You're not chasing someone else's setup. You're waiting for your setup to appear. You're not trying to trade every headline. You're narrowing your focus to what actually works for you. That's the path to elite performance. Bellafiore saw this play out repeatedly on his desk. The traders who reviewed and refined their playbook trades daily, they didn't just get better, they got faster, more accurate, more scalable. Their career trajectory accelerated because they weren't scattered. They were sharp, focused, disciplined. So ask yourself, are you building a playbook or winging it? Are you logging your best work or letting it disappear into memory? Are you reviewing patterns or repeating mistakes? Because your playbook is more than a log. It's a mirror. It shows you where your edge really lives. And once you start compiling one good trade at a time, that mirror reflects progress, clarity, and control. That's what you scale. That's what you lean on when emotions spike and uncertainty rises. You don't need more signals, you need more structure. And the playbook is where that structure begins. The trade is over, but the real work is just beginning. You clicked in, managed risk, exited the position, and now comes the part that most traders skip, but elite traders obsess over. Review, replay, reinforce. This is where growth happens, not during the trade, but after it. Mike Bellafiore built the culture at SMB Capital around this exact idea. Every good trade is an opportunity to level up, not by celebrating the win or regretting the loss, but by dissecting the decision-making process that led to the outcome. Because in the end, you don't become consistent by making money. You become consistent by making sense of your actions. This means journaling with ruthless honesty. Not just logging the trade, but documenting what you saw, how you felt, what you expected, where you hesitated, and what you'll do next time. The replay process isn't for the ego, it's for the evolution. And it's not optional. If you're not reviewing your trades, you're leaving growth on the table. You're repeating mistakes that should have been eliminated. You're forgetting patterns that should have been reinforced. Bellafiore preaches that each trade is a learning unit. And if you're not extracting data from it, you're wasting it. His traders often record screen captures of their sessions, then replay them with commentary. They zoom in on moments where their process broke down. They pause at hesitation points. They relive executions to understand not just what happened, but why. That level of review transforms your learning curve. It accelerates pattern recognition. It exposes emotional triggers. It turns your trading day into a classroom, not a casino. And that mindset, treating each trade like a case study, is what separates the amateur from the developing professional. Think about how athletes watch game tape. They're not doing it for fun. They're doing it to sharpen instincts, refine timing, and eliminate weakness. Traders must do the same, because the market exposes your gaps, review reveals them, and reinforcement locks in the lesson. This is where the real edge compounds. Every time you review a trade, your brain logs the nuance a little deeper. Your intuition sharpens. You internalize what a high-quality setup feels like, not just what it looks like. And that gut instinct you admire in top traders? It's not magic. It's memory. It's thousands of reps. It's review after review after review. But here's the hard truth. Most traders avoid this work because it's uncomfortable. It forces you to confront where you messed up. It strips away the illusion of control. But Bellafiore insists, This discomfort is where the gold is. If you can sit with it, if you can extract the feedback, you will accelerate faster than you think possible. Because you're not just trading, you're training, you're reinforcing muscle memory, you're turning randomness into rhythm. Over time, your journal becomes your most valuable asset. It tells the truth, it shows your growth, it points to the leaks you're finally fixing. But only if you use it, only if you're willing to slow down, review with intention, and reinforce with repetition. So build the habit. Don't just journal, study. Don't just replay, reflect. Ask the hard questions. Did I follow my plan? Was the thesis valid? Where was the emotional spike? What would I do differently with the same setup tomorrow? This is not busy work. It's brain work. It's rewiring your execution system. It's turning every good trade into a stepping stone toward mastery. And Bellafiore knew the traders who treated post-trade review as sacred, they became killers. Not because they were born talented, but because they sharpened their edge every single day after the bell. So next time you close a position, don't just walk away. Dig in, break it down, rebuild the moment in your mind. Because your growth doesn't depend on how many trades you take, it depends on how deeply you study the ones that mattered. That's how pros move. That's how edge compounds. That's how you get one good trade again and again and again. You don't need 100 trades a day to make progress. You just need one good trade. That phrase, repeated like a mantra by Mike Bellafiore, isn't just a motivational slogan. It's a framework, a mindset, a trading identity. The idea is simple, yet most traders overlook it because they're obsessed with volume, action, and constant engagement. But Bellafiore's most successful traders internalize a different truth. Quality beats quantity every single time. One good trade means you followed your process. You waited for the right setup. You defined your risk. You executed with discipline. You reviewed with purpose. And regardless of whether it was a winner or loser, you're proud of that trade. Why? Because it aligned with your edge. It aligned with your playbook. It aligned with your rules. Bellafiore teaches that when you stack days filled with one good trade, consistency follows. Not from luck, not from emotion, but from structure. One good trade cuts through the noise. It says, you don't need to force it today. It reminds you that chasing every candle, every spike, every alert isn't the path to success. It's the path to burnout. Instead, your job is to be a sniper, to wait for your A-plus setup, to sit on your hands when the conditions aren't right. One good trade demands patience. It demands clarity. It demands the maturity to walk away from a mediocre setup and wait for the one that deserves your focus. This mindset rewires how you approach the market. It's not about the outcome. It's about the process. Did you trade within your system? Did you respect your rules? Did you manage your emotions? Did you execute cleanly? If the answer is yes, then whether the trade made money or not, it was a success. Bellafiore's traders journal this way. They rate their trades based on quality, not P&L. And that's the key shift, because when you obsess over outcomes, you chase. But when you obsess over process, you improve. One good trade becomes a feedback loop for growth. It trains your brain to value discipline over dopamine. It shifts your focus from how much can I make to how well did I perform. That shift changes everything. It takes you from being reactive to proactive, from impulsive to intentional, from average to elite. The phrase itself, one good trade, anchors you. When the market's fast and your screen is lighting up, it tells you to slow down. When you're in a drawdown and confidence is shaken, it reminds you that redemption is one clean execution away. When you're winning and tempted to overtrade, it pulls you back to the process. One good trade is your compass, your filter, your philosophy. It's what separates you from the gambler pressing buttons just to feel something. It's what connects you to the mindset of professional traders who've survived and thrived for decades. Because no matter how complex the market gets, your job stays the same. Find one good trade, execute it with precision, then move on. Stack those trades, review them, refine them. Over time, the results take care of themselves. Bellafiore's desk isn't built on lucky streaks. It's built on repeatable edge, executed one trade at a time. And if you want to think, act, and evolve like a pro, start asking yourself, Was that one good trade? Not, did I make money? Not, did I catch the move? Just, was that one good trade? Because if the answer is yes, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. And if it's not, you know exactly what to fix. This philosophy creates calm in chaos. It creates focus in distraction. It brings you back to the moment, to the setup, to the structure. And in the end, it's the only metric that truly matters. One good trade, every day. That's how you become who you say you want to be. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your training. And in trading, that training is live, simulated, structured, intentional. Bellafiore doesn't just talk about trading like it's a solo sport. He treats it like high-performance athletics. At SMB, he built a culture around real-time learning, where traders don't just sit and hope, they train deliberately every single day. This means drilling patterns in a simulator until execution becomes instinct. This means doing live trading drills that test decision-making under pressure. This means role-playing scenarios, news events, open drives, liquidity traps, so that when the real thing happens, you're not surprised. You're ready, because you've trained for it. Bellafiore sees the desk like a gym. You're not walking in to prove yourself. You're walking in to practice. That's why the best traders on his team aren't always the most talented at the start. They're the most coachable. They embrace repetition. They lean into structure. They treat trading like a craft, not a gamble. And that's what most retail traders miss. They think trading is about prediction. Bellafiore teaches it's about preparation. You don't just wake up and hope to perform well. You design a training routine that builds your edge. This includes visualization. Top traders at SMB literally sit down and visualize their best setups before the bell. They see the chart forming. They feel the execution. They anticipate how they'll manage the trade, what they'll do if it works, what they'll do if it doesn't. It sounds like sports psychology because it is sports psychology. You're conditioning your nervous system to respond with control instead of chaos. You're building consistency not just in charts, but in character. And that's what separates elite traders from emotional ones. They train their focus. They train their patience. They train their process. It's not glamorous. It's not sexy, but it's what works. And if you're not training, you're decaying. You're reinforcing bad habits. You're winging it. Bellafiore is brutally clear. Trading without training is just expensive guessing. That's why SMB has structure. Morning meetings to review setups, midday recaps to dissect execution, end-of-day reviews to log lessons. This rhythm builds internal rhythm. It's how traders go from shaky to solid, from reactive to ready. And here's the thing, you don't need a prop firm to do this. You can train like an SMB trader from your home desk. Start with structure. Create a pre-market routine where you map your top 3 setups. Do a mental walkthrough. Sim trade if you must. Practice risk management scenarios, build muscle memory. Then during the day, execute with intention. Afterward, review like a surgeon. What did you see? What did you miss? What will you drill tomorrow? Because training is not an event, it's a lifestyle. You don't stop training when you make money. You start training harder because now you have something to protect. The best traders aren't just competitive. They're obsessed with mastery. They treat each day as another chance to sharpen their edge. And Bellafiore is crystal clear. You are either getting better or falling behind. There is no neutral. So ask yourself, are you training like a professional or hoping like an amateur? Are you logging reps or logging into chat rooms? Are you controlling your variables or being controlled by them? Because in this game, the market doesn't care how bad you want it. It only responds to preparation. Your job is to make preparation your edge. Make training your daily standard. Make discipline your default mode. And over time, the compounding effect will do what no shortcut ever could. Build you into a real trader. Not someone who trades, but someone who is trained to trade. That's the shift Bellafiore wants for you. That's the shift you need to make. Train, review, refine, repeat. That's how you build a trading career worth having. You think trading is about finding that one magical setup, that golden pattern that always works. But Mike Bellafiore teaches you something deeper. Your real edge comes from your playbook. Not a fixed set of rules, but a living, evolving catalog of your best setups, studied, reviewed, and executed with precision. Your playbook is not just a trading diary, it's your trading DNA. It's how you identify what works for you in your style, with your psychology, under your conditions. Most traders ignore this. They chase the next hot strategy, switch from indicator to indicator, and wonder why their equity curve looks like a cardiogram. But the elite traders, the ones who survive at SMB Capital and thrive in the most competitive environment in the world, they build a playbook the way an athlete builds a highlight reel. You review your best trades not to celebrate, but to deconstruct. What did you see before the move? What pattern was in play? What was the market environment? How did you enter, size, manage, and exit? What can you replicate? What can you improve? And then you do this relentlessly, week after week. Bellafiore pushes his traders to categorize setups by quality, by conviction, by context. A playbook setup might be a breaking news reversal, or a high volume range break, or a failed bounce fade on day 2 weakness. Whatever it is, it's specific. It's yours. It's tested. And most importantly, it's something you understand deeply. Not just what to do, but why you're doing it. You're not a robot following a checklist. You're a strategist refining your edge. And here's what happens when you take the playbook seriously. Your confidence grows. You stop second-guessing entries. You execute cleanly. You hold longer. You scale when appropriate. You walk away when the setup isn't there. Because you know what an A-plus setup looks like in your own language. And that's the key. Your playbook builds decision clarity. When the market moves fast, you don't panic. You scan for the setups you know. You aren't trying to trade everything. You're looking for your things. And that filter is gold. Bellafiore's desk has seen traders with mediocre accuracy earn consistent returns because they stuck to a handful of high-quality playbook setups and executed them with ruthless consistency. No guessing, no forcing, just repeating what works. And that's what you must do. Build your playbook, refine it, categorize setups by variables like time of day, volume signature, news catalyst, market sentiment. Keep screenshots, record voice memos, write post-trade reflections, make it visual, make it real. Because when your playbook grows, so does your edge. You start seeing patterns faster. You start anticipating moves before others react. And this becomes your foundation, not someone else's signals, not Reddit chat rooms, not some guru's alerts. Just you, your process, your data, your discipline, and the playbook becomes your mirror. When you're off your game, you'll see it immediately. Your trades don't match your playbook. You're improvising. You're emotional. And that's the signal to pull back, to reset, to review. Your playbook is your compass when emotions rise. It's your anchor when the market whipsaws. And over time, it becomes the most powerful weapon in your arsenal. Bellafiore repeats this to his traders like a creed. Build your playbook, or you'll be building someone else's. Because if you don't define your edge, the market will chew you up. It doesn't reward improvisation. It rewards preparation. And your playbook is the ultimate preparation tool. It's the culmination of every good trade, every hard lesson, every tweak you've made to your strategy. So ask yourself now, do you have a playbook? Not a vague idea, but a real, documented, evolving archive of what you do best? If not, start today. Review your top 10 trades, document the context, tag the patterns, name the setups, review them weekly, drill them in simulation, talk about them with accountability partners, and above all, revisit them in moments of doubt, because that's what elite traders do. They don't trade from emotion, they trade from structure. And your structure starts with one thing, your playbook. You're taught that trading is a solo sport, a lone wolf game, a battle between you and the market. You imagine the best traders isolated in dark rooms, staring at charts like assassins. But Mike Bellafiore flips that image on its head. Inside a top proprietary trading firm like SMB Capital, the real pros are not operating in silence. They're talking, sharing, reviewing, learning from each other every single day. Because trading, when done at the highest level, is a team sport. And if you're doing it alone, you're leaving exponential growth on the table. When you collaborate with other traders, you compress time. You collapse learning curves. You avoid years of mistakes by listening to the guy who made them last month. You spot patterns sooner because someone else sees the same thing you missed. You gain confidence, not just from your own data, but from the shared conviction of others who are tracking the same setups with similar edge. Inside SMB, traders don't keep edge secret. They share playbook trades with the team. They deconstruct open trades live. They run morning meetings with game plans and afternoon reviews dissecting every important stock of the day. And that's where the magic happens. You grow not just from your trades, but from a dozen others. Imagine how much faster you'd develop if every day you got to review 10 different traders' setups, executions, and thought processes. That's what team trading does. It builds collective pattern recognition. It creates an environment where good ideas multiply, where risk gets filtered through multiple perspectives, and where emotional blind spots get caught by your peers. Alone, you're trapped in your own psychology. In a team, you gain access to multiple emotional lenses. One trader spots an emotional chase. Another recognizes hesitation in a confirmed setup. A third reminds you to reframe a loss within the broader context. And that collective coaching becomes a shield against your worst impulses. Bellafiore talks about this constantly. The best firms in the world don't just recruit talent, they nurture it in groups. They build desks that think together, act together, win and lose together. Because that's how real edge becomes scalable. If you're trading from your bedroom with no feedback loop, your growth curve flattens. You're only as good as your last guess. But in a trading group, your edge gets sharpened daily. You see others executing cleanly, and it pushes you to raise your game. You hear ideas you wouldn't think of alone. You discover setups you would have missed. And most importantly, you build accountability. Because the moment you have to present your trade idea to others, you naturally become more structured, more intentional, more honest. There's no room for lazy logic or hope-based trades when you're explaining your rationale to a room of skilled traders. And that changes your behavior. You start preparing better. You journal more. You review with more rigor. And you stop making the same emotional errors because others are watching, not to judge, but to help. Bellafiore even teaches traders to record their screens and review together, frame by frame, not to shame mistakes, but to study the process. Was the entry planned? Was the size right? Was the risk-reward aligned? That's the power of team-based feedback. It's not just input, it's calibration. It turns isolated confusion into collective clarity, and it makes trading sustainable, because this job is brutal when you go it alone. The losses sting deeper. The wins feel hollow. The doubts creep in louder. But in a team, you get perspective. You realize you're not broken, you're just learning. You see others push through drawdowns. You share the emotional burden, and you get reminded day after day that this is a craft, not a sprint. So if you want to be great, you need to stop hiding behind screens and start collaborating. Join a group. Build a review crew. Trade live with others. Share your playbook setups. Offer feedback without ego. Ask for critiques. And most of all, build a culture of growth. Because in that kind of environment, your progress will explode. You'll evolve faster, build confidence deeper, and most of all, you'll no longer feel like you're doing this alone. Because the truth is, the best traders don't succeed because they're lone geniuses. They succeed because they build environments where excellence compounds. And that starts when you realize that trading is not a solo act. It's a team sport. You think failure means you're not cut out for this, that after a string of red days, you're exposed as a fraud, someone who should never have opened a trading account. But that's not failure. That's feedback. Mike Bellafiore reframes the entire concept of loss, not as a judgment on who you are, but as a signal pointing to what you haven't built yet. When you miss a trade, when you chase a breakout, when you oversize and get stopped out, the failure isn't personal, it's procedural. You didn't fail because you're weak. You failed because your system doesn't yet absorb that scenario. And if you're serious about growth, you'll stop beating yourself up and start building something stronger. Bellafiore shows you how elite traders inside his firm treat every mistake like a code break. They don't spiral into shame. They investigate. They journal with detail. They record their screens. They replay the moment of execution. They isolate the emotional trigger. They identify the lack of preparation. And most of all, they ask the one question that changes everything. What do I need to install so this doesn't happen again? That's how you grow. Not by avoiding failure, but by engineering around it. And if you're not doing that, you're wasting the tuition you just paid to the market. Every trade you botch is a paid lesson, but the ROI only comes if you review, repair, and reinforce. One of the most powerful rituals at SMB Capital is the post-trade review. Not just a few sentences in a journal, but a full breakdown. What was your thesis? What was your entry? What did you see in the order flow? What could have gone better? And here's the key. These reviews don't happen only after big wins. They happen after losses, especially after losses, because that's when you're emotionally exposed. That's when your bias shows. That's when your process gaps light up in neon. And if you're willing to look, if you're willing to replay the tape without ego, you'll see it. The hesitation, the hope, the rationalization, the pattern that cost you again. But that's the gift, because once you see it, you can name it. And once you name it, you can build a rule, a trigger, a checklist item to catch it next time. That's how failure becomes fuel. Bellafiore insists that traders stop thinking in terms of right and wrong. He urges you to replace judgment with data. You didn't blow it. You entered without confirmation. You didn't choke. You failed to size properly. You didn't overtrade. You lacked a tiered system for conviction levels. Do you see the shift? You move from self-attack to system upgrade. You shift from blame to design. And that is what separates traders who survive from traders who compound. You're not judged by your worst day. You're judged by what you build from your worst day. Inside a prop firm, failure is constant. Even elite traders take losses daily. But what keeps them standing is their obsession with systemizing feedback. They don't run from red. They dive into it. They don't bury mistakes. They dissect them. And that's what you must learn if you want to be here 10 years from now. You need to become a builder, a trader who sees every drawdown as an architectural flaw to fix, a professional who uses each emotional crack as a blueprint for reinforcement. And here's the truth. Your best growth won't come from the trades you win. It'll come from the trades you ruin, if you're brave enough to unpack them. That's where your edge sharpens. That's where your mindset matures. That's where your playbook gets tighter. And that's where you start acting like a professional. So next time you get stopped out, don't sulk. Replay the tape, annotate the chart, record the lesson, ask yourself what system piece is missing, build the checklist, code the rule, anchor the reminder, and then put it to work. Because every failure you don't review becomes a future repeat. But every failure you convert into a process upgrade moves you 1 inch closer to consistency. This is the truth Bellafiore drills into every new trader at SMB. You don't become elite by avoiding pain. You become elite by converting pain into process. And the faster you do that, the faster you stop flinching after losses. Because now, every red candle carries intel. Every emotional spike points to a weak spot in your system. And instead of taking it personally, you take it professionally. You say, "Thank you for the lesson. Now let's build the fix." And that is how failure becomes the most valuable trade you'll ever take. You've been told mastery is a milestone, a finish line where you finally arrive and everything clicks. But that's a myth. In trading, mastery isn't a destination. It's a habit. It's not something you reach. It's something you repeat, over and over, relentlessly. Mike Bellafiore drills this truth deep into the DNA of every trader at SMB Capital. Your greatness is measured not by how well you trade on your best day, but by what you do on your worst day and every ordinary day in between. You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your habits. You might have moments of brilliance, a few green streaks, some solid trades that make you feel invincible, but unless those are anchored in routines, they're accidents. And in this game, you can't afford to rely on accidents. What Bellafiore shows is that elite traders are boring. They're consistent. They do the same things day after day after day, review the same plays, ask the same questions, run the same filters, do the same preparation. They build routines so solid that their emotional states don't dictate their actions. The market might be volatile, but they aren't. Because mastery is about reducing variance of process, not outcome. You can't control how much the trade pays, but you can control how well you prepared. You can control how accurately you executed. You can control whether you journaled that trade with honesty. And the trader who does that day after day, without needing dopamine, without needing drama, is the one who wins over time. Bellafiore talks about the concept of the playbook, a dynamic collection of your best trades, categorized, reviewed, updated. This isn't a notebook of past glories. It's a living system, and it must be fed daily. You don't build a playbook and forget it. You build it like an athlete builds muscle. You add reps, you remove weak moves, you upgrade patterns, and you don't just log the good ones, you log everything. Because mastery isn't hiding from mistakes, it's facing them faster. You might wonder, what if I lose my edge? The answer isn't to pray it comes back. The answer is to rebuild it by running your filters, by watching tape, by adjusting risk, by studying market structure. That's what professionals do. They don't wait for confidence. They manufacture it with repetition. You show up even when you're unsure. You show up even when yesterday was awful. You show up even when you're tired, discouraged, or tempted to blame the market because you've built the identity of someone who trades well regardless of emotion. That's mastery. You are your habits, not your hopes, not your ideas, not even your P&L. Bellafiore sees it all the time. New traders chasing strategy after strategy, hoping the next setup will be the key. But the problem isn't the setup. It's the lack of consistency. You didn't stick to a risk parameter. You didn't respect your stop. You didn't prepare your levels. And then you blame the market. No, the market didn't betray you. You betrayed your own process. And until you fix that, no edge will save you. Because the real edge is consistency. A trader who does 10-10 execution on an average setup outperforms the sloppy trader with a golden setup. Process trumps prediction, and habit trumps talent. So you ask, how do I install this level of discipline? Start with one thing, one routine, one review, one daily prep sheet, one end-of-day write-up, and you do that until it's automatic. Then you layer the next habit. Bellafiore recommends using video. Record your trading screen, watch your behavior. Not just what you saw, but what you felt. Why did you hesitate? Why did you exit too soon? Why did you double size when your edge wasn't there? This kind of brutal honesty is how elite traders train. Not just their setups, their psychology. They rehearse confidence, they practice clarity, they repeat preparation. Because they know success is built in the shadows before the bell rings. The difference between you and the top 1% isn't intelligence, it's repetition. They review more tape, they journal with more detail, they do more reps. And because of that, their trades look easy, but they aren't. They're rehearsed, like a dancer who makes the move look effortless, but practiced it 1,000 times. That's what you're building. Not random wins, muscle memory, reflex-level discipline. You're becoming someone who doesn't have to try hard because trying hard is already your default. This isn't about hustle culture. This is about making the hard things normal, making the uncomfortable decisions automatic, making discipline your comfort zone. And the payoff isn't just a better trade, it's a better identity. You stop thinking like a gambler. You start acting like a fund manager. You stop hoping the trade works. You start managing risk like a surgeon. You stop reacting to emotion. You start responding with structure. That's the shift Bellafiore is teaching. You don't just want good trades. You want to be a good trader. Someone who can walk into any market, any setup, any condition, and know exactly how to behave. Because your habit's already decided for you. And if you miss a day, you don't spiral. You reset. Because the habit is stronger than the setback. This is what it means to be a professional. You are no longer controlled by fear or greed. You're controlled by the checklist, the playbook, the daily routine. And through that discipline, you earn something far more valuable than money. Self-trust. You know that no matter what the market does, you won't disappear. You'll still be standing. You'll still be refining. You'll still be here tomorrow. That's mastery. And it starts with what you choose to do next. Not next month, not after the next blow up, right now. Decide the kind of trader you want to be and start acting like it. Not when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Because that's what makes it real. That's what makes it stick. And that's what separates the ones who wish from the ones who win. Build the habit. Be the process. Trust the work. That's the edge no one can take from you.